I am here to talk to you about neighbors. I'm here to talk to you about community. I'm here to talk to you about why the time that we live in, it might be more important than ever to know how to meet the people around you. And it might be more important than ever to do that with everybody. I'm Bradley Eshbach. Josh already introduced me. I'm from Johnson City. I grew up here. I moved here in 6th grade, and then I left after college. Mainly because, every adult in my life, except for my mom and dad, were like, you got to get out of here. You are ambitious. You should leave. I'm very glad to be back. It's been really cool to come back here. It's been kind of weird to come back here in some ways. I was a teenage magician. There's a lot of weird segues in this. I obviously work in advertising. I'm a strategist. I'm a brand strategist. I'm kind of obsessed about how people make decisions, how humans human, or how people are influenced. I started that as a teenage magician. Everybody thinks that they uniquely are not, they're not easily tricked. It's not going to work on them. It's going to work on all you fools, but not on me. Advertising, marketing, teenage magicianing, it's all the same. Who here is from Johnson City? Raise your hand. I'm going to get you to raise your hands. It's not that many people. It's not that high of a number of people. What's interesting is everybody in here, your great-grandmother is older than Johnson City is. Johnson City is relatively young. Johnson City is 100 years younger than every other city in East Tennessee. If you talk about Jonesboro, you talk about Kingsport. It started in the 1840s. Henry Johnson showed up in a place that already existed. There was a place here called Blue Plum. There's about 600 folks here. And there have been about 600 folks here for about 100 years. And Henry Johnson, obviously, there were a couple railroads coming in, popped up a general store. What's really interesting is he popped up that general store and he ran it for 20 years before he actually started Johnson City, before it became Johnson City. That is really where most people's knowledge of the history of Johnson City kind of stops. It's like there was Henry Johnson, we have a VA, Kenny Chesney was here once, and you just kind of stop. We've really sterilized over the last few years, the last few decades, the kind of what makes Johnson City so uniquely interesting, so just kind of a place where misfits and where dreamers and where the creatives go. Johnson City started out, I love pulling up these old ads. This is an article from 1936. Numerous complaints are heard daily on the police department with reference to the robbery wave which has been sweeping Johnson City for many months. Down at the bottom, it's if stuff doesn't happen, these civic clubs, we're going to get together, we're going to take care of this ourselves. Okay? This is some people have seen this. This predates Al Capone. We were called Little Chicago long before the Al Capone maybe owned an apartment building in the Tree Streets. That's Little Chicago with, if you can't tell, watch this laser pointer. He has a little hat that says Johnson City, Tennessee. He's carrying a gun that says Wickedest City Title, which he stole from Big Chicago. What the hell were they talking about? Why is that the story? Well, because Johnson City's wild. 1956, Look magazine. It was like the spouse to, or the sibling to Life magazine. They had the Battle Against Sin issue. And they ranked every city in America on their propensity for sin. How welcoming were they to sin? The hot spots of sin. Johnson City. We're the farthest east thing besides Albany, New York. I didn't know this growing up. This has been sterilized away. Johnson City, we have a population of about 70,000 people now, right? We just cracked that. 1.2 million people visited Washington County in 2021. That's a hell of a lot of people coming through Washington County, especially when most of us in this room still think about this as it's a sleepy area. It's a small town, right? We're getting a little too big. We already are big. We have been big when you talk about the impact. Here's what's really wild when you start to play it out. How many people do you think have lived in Johnson City? How many people do you think have called Johnson City home over the years? 5 million people. 5 million people have called Johnson City home. 5 million people have passed through here. 5 million people have either gone to ETSU or come to Leah Railroad. 5 million people. I'll keep saying it. That's nuts to me. Source, math. You got to put sources for these TED Talks. Math. 5 million people have lived here, and I say that just because, look, I moved here in 2020. We all know what this narrative has been about, people moving here in that time. Introducing new people, bringing new people into the fold is a uniquely Johnson City skill set. It's a thing that we do better than almost anybody. Not all Appalachia does. We do. We are 100 years younger than any other city here. This place was built by railroad workers. Johnson City was the equivalent of like the people that moved to North Dakota 10 years ago to go work in the oil fields. That was Johnson City. There was nothing here. It was the same 600 people lived here for almost 100 years. And then some stuff happened. We're a community of transplants. We always kind of really have been. I think we've lost sight of that. I didn't even know it. But I want to kind of run through a little bit of like kind of the history of Johnson City's growth and kind of talk about why I think that's creating some of the pressure that we feel today of just we've lost these really core skills to being a human and being part of a community. So in the 7 counties in Northeast Tennessee grew about 2.2% from 2010 to 2020. If you take and do a little bit of math on 2020 to 22, it's maybe 15%. 15% growth. We've grown 15% in a decade. That seems, right, that if you read the internet, if you get on local Facebook groups or some local news, it's like the sky is falling. Tensions feel way more intense, way more just palpable. Everything, every article, every story about what's happening, it's the traffic is because of these people that are moving here. They're gonna take our houses and take our land and our parking spots. I had real Facebook comment screenshots here. I had to take them out because it was negative and I was bumming everybody out. But this is out there. We fear the outsider, and this is a new fear. We've always been a welcoming community, but this is a kind of a universal thing that we're feeling. If I read these stats, you all get it. The number of Americans that agree with the statement, I trust my neighbors, 20 years ago, 60%. Today, 30%. Millennials, 18%. We don't trust our neighbors. Our neighbors are not necessarily less trustworthy now than they used to be. I think it might be because we don't know them. I have a great or good deal of trust in the political competence of our fellow citizens. 1997, 2/3 of the nation. Now, 1/3 of the nation. We've lost trust of our neighbors. We've lost trust in their ability to participate in civil society. Johnson City has been through this before. We call ourselves a boom town sometimes, but we forget to remind ourselves that we are a boom town that booms over and over and over. We've never had any really like wild bust, but we've had a lot of times that have really prepared us for this. If I go through a couple of the dates that I love from Johnson City history, 1856, Henry Johnson comes down, goes to Blue Plum, puts up a general store, starts selling stuff. And he does that for 20 years. For 20 years, the population, then in 1868, they opened Science Hill. And a year later, we become Johnson City. I went to Science Hill, I didn't know that. In 1880, there were 685 people here. In like 1790, there were 685 people here. It was the same families. They were all spread out. It was a really sleepy community. And then in 10 years, it grew 500%. It went from 600 people to 4,000 people. What happened? Well, the war ended, the Civil War ended, Reconstruction happened, industrialists started coming down here, they found coal in these here mines, they started cutting down the trees, started building railroads to take all that stuff out. So we had a massive population increase, 507%. 15% we're freaking out about? It was the same 600 people for like 100 years. And then 4,000 people showed up. And when it was 4,000 people here, it was a third black. And when it was 4,000 people here, it was a third immigrant. 1910, 20 years later, 83% increase. Now, the economy across the nation was like, there was a big depression, a big panic in 1893. Everything got destroyed. There was a northern Civil War general. He won, he took his winnings, he came down here, bought a bunch of land next to Johnson City. Over the course of one summer in 1891, he laid out the entire grid system, like 9 blocks going one way, 7 blocks going the other way. Started running ads all over the United States. Moved to Johnson City, the Pittsburgh of the South, the gateway to the Alleghenies. What does that even mean? And he said, move here. We need a mill. We need a this. We need a that. We need a that. 1893, the economy collapsed. He lost all his money, sold it off. That's now the Gump edition. That's now Baxter Street, all the numbered streets. One guy with his Civil War earnings laid that out. Then it all collapsed, and it was pretty gnarly for a few years. 1910, 83% increase again. It's because one of the greatest senators in Tennessee history went on the House floor in 1907, I think, and said, y'all got to build a VA in East Tennessee. If it weren't for East Tennessee, you wouldn't have won the Civil War. You owe us. And after a vote of like 358 to 0, they gave us one. They said, East Tennessee, you get a VA. So he marched down to Greenville where he was from. He was like, guys, I got you a VA. And they were like, we're good. We don't want a VA. It's going to be a bunch of sick veterans. We don't want that. Johnson City was like, we'll take it. And that started this 100-year progress of healthcare and medicine and just like, what is East Tennessee now? It was another boom. 1930s, 102% increase. What happened then? The New Deal. Why do you think we have all these dams? Why do you think we have all these lakes? That didn't just happen. They spent a bunch of money and a bunch of people came down here and they built it. Massive. Then it happened again in the 1990s. That's when a bunch of white trash from Oklahoma called the Eshbachs moved here. 24% increase, almost twice what we're seeing today. Huge population. The last 3 decades, it's all been like 11 to 15%. We've been here before. That's my whole point that I'm trying to make. These are not new challenges, but it does feel different. And that different feeling is just because of some bigger macro things. Like, we all live in these communal deserts. We are isolated. I can go deep into why that's just like the natural progression of capitalism, and all of us need to be atomized down to individuals, that anything you need from food to love comes from a brand, a corporation, an app. 49% of Americans say they have 3 or fewer close friends. 54% say no one knows me well. That's depressing, but it's real. 4 times as many people say that they have no close personal friends than they did a decade ago. 2 in 5 people say they sometimes or always feel like they lack companionship. Deep, deep loneliness. 58% increase in teen suicide in 2 decades. Basically a 3x increase in deaths of despair. This is what happens when people are isolated. We start killing ourselves by trying to numb ourselves. How'd we get here? Well, there's really kind of 3 shifts, and these aren't rocket science. Like, you all feel them. We shifted our entire world from IRL, in real life, to the digital space. I think about this a lot, like a 12-year-old. Think about all the coming of age moments, the like 50 things that happen when you're a preteen that take you from a kid to not a kid. The first time you have a best friend, the first time you fall in love, the first time you go to a sleepover, the first time you connect with someone for real, the first time you find your people, the first time you're backstabbed, the first time you're heartbroken. What if 90% of those happen online? And y'all see how people interact online. I had to take the comments out. If all of that happened there, it isolates you. It changes the way that you look at society. It changes the way that you communicate with people. There's not that filter when you're in real life or in the digital world that exists in real life. If I say something that just royally pisses one of you off right now, you're going to have to take a second and be like, is he for real? What am I missing? Why did he do that? If we're online, blocked, and you screenshot and send it to your friends. We just have no propensity for argument. The second thing, and this is a huge one, local memberships have completely plummeted. If you look at the social calendar of an adult in the 1950s, on one night, they're going to their Shriner meeting. The next night, they're going over to the VFW. They're an Optimist. They're a Ruritan. All of these clubs, Rotary International, Kiwanis International, Optimist International, Moose International, a lot of international, American Legion, Ancient Order of the Hibernians, Daughters of the American Revolution, Sons of the American Revolution, Eagles Club, Freemasons. Oh, there's more. Toastmasters International, Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks, the Improved Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks, Independent Order of the Oddfellows, the General Federation of Women Clubs, the Loyal Order of the Moose, the Woodmen of the World, the Cedars of Lebanon, the Order of Amarath, my favorite, the Ancient Arabic Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. Those are Shriners. Shriners. Everybody has a grandparent that was in one of these. Everybody, you go any park in this city has one of these names on it. Every rec center has one of these names on it. Every ball field has one of these names on it. Where'd that go? It's completely disappeared. We've completely shifted our world of our community, our connection to people, with this kind of facsimile of it that exists online. I have been a proud card-carrying member my entire life of the International Brotherhood of Magicians, not the Society of American Magicians, our archenemy. Magic probably saved my life. Magic is the thing that helped me understand what the hell is going on in the world, and it's the way that let me meet people and talk to people. I learned everything I knew about magic in East Tennessee, either in flea market booths, the back room at Top Hat Magic, which is now closed, it used to be on State Street in Bristol, shout out to Dave Vaught, and church basements. Because church basements was the only place that we could go have a meeting every other week. And let me tell you, it's real tiring as a 15-year-old to have to explain to an adult why sleight of hand is not the same as the black magic in the book of John. But we had to do it, just like all the heavy metal shows I went to growing up. We're in the same church basements. And I had to have the same conversations about why the black lipstick isn't going to kill someone. Why did we have to meet in church basements? Because third places have completely disappeared. Third spaces in our society have disappeared. A third space is in sociology. First place, that's home. That's where you spend all your time. Second place, that's work. That's where they want you to spend all your time. Third place is everywhere else where society happens. It's the cafes, it's the clubs, it's the libraries, it's the gyms, it's the sidewalks. It's the conversations in the parking lot. The stoops in the bookstores, that's where society happens. This is where civil engagement happens. This is where you meet people that you don't agree with. This is where you learn new things. This is where your beliefs are challenged. This is where you challenge others' beliefs. You need physical spaces for that. Because when it happens not in a physical space, when it happens online, we all see what happens. I block you. I can't even put the screenshots in my presentation. It doesn't happen in a third place. We've shifted from downtowns to malls. 1971 in Johnson City. We switched from train cars to cars. Did y'all know you could take a train from Jonesboro to Johnson City to go shopping in the late 80s? This is not new. This is new. This shift, it's not as this stuff has happened very quickly. General stores to Starbucks. Starbucks for a long time was calling themselves a third place. Starbucks, look at the shift that's made. 10 years ago, you could go in there and maybe talk to people. Now you go in there, everybody's got headphones on. It's like a study hall. It's like an internet cafe. They've even screwed up sidewalks to drive-thrus. When was the last time you bumped into someone on the street? When was the last time you were on a street? Cashiers to robots. We don't even interact with the guy that's like checking out at the grocery store. Community is so key for us to be able to take on whatever the hell is coming. Depending on what Facebook group you're in, it's either a civil war or a culture war or a Sharknado. Something's coming. You need to know the people around you. If the power goes out, that's not the time to figure out what the guy in 3B's name is. You need to know your neighbors. So I'm going to give you the easiest advice on how to know your neighbors, how to get to know your neighbors. These are such table stakes things, but it's amazing how much we've all forgotten them, or we just don't do them. First, for local leaders, there's some stuff that we can do to kind of put our finger on the scale. Number one, we got to support businesses that bring people together. And the caveat I'll put that is, especially ones that don't do it around America's favorite addictions, caffeine and alcohol. Think of a third place in East Tennessee that exists that doesn't have one of those two things. And then it's real depressing. We need to create new reasons to gather. I love what Johnson City's done in recent past with everything from the Candyland Christmas to having all the festivals and everything. But at the Generalist, we've walked outside before a few weekends ago, and there was just 500 people dressed as Smurfs. And I'm like, does anybody know what's happening? No one knew what was happening. It was some app. Some app had this thing. There wasn't even an organizer. Last year, they showed up as Beauty and the Beast. There are a lot of people are aching to show up. People dress up as a Smurf and just show up. None of these people like the Smurfs. It's not like there's all these Smurf fans around here. They just wanted something to do. Johnson City has about 750 miles of laned roads that we maintain. We do a great job. Shout out Public Works. We have only 176 miles of city sidewalks. We got to put some new ones in there. We got to get some new sidewalks. Sidewalks are one of the most important things to a community. because it's where you run into your neighbors. For locals, some easy stuff. One, greet new people. When we moved here in the 90s, every member of Central Baptist showed up at my house over the course of like 2 months. And I don't even know how they found out who we were. That doesn't happen anymore. And look, we moved here during COVID. We didn't even talk to our neighbors for the first 6 months. It's weird. Like, we have some residual trauma from that. We got to get over it. You got to chase being the outsider. If you're in a room and you look around, you know everybody, or you're in a room and you look around and you probably know everybody, or you know what they think, or they all look like you, look for some other rooms. Especially, it's about all the ways you can slice and dice, but especially the intergenerational thing. We don't spend enough time with people that are not the same age as us. And Johnson City is a very diverse generationally. 57% of the people that have moved here in the last 2 years are over 40. 28% of the people that have moved here in the last 2 years are retirement age. This isn't just a bunch of young people coming down here and living downtown. It's a bunch of people moving out to like Chucky and never talking to anybody. If you're gonna move to a new place, you have to engage with that community. Take a walk. Sounds like I'm being mean. Take a walk on these new sidewalks the city's gonna put in for us. Take out your headphones. I put in my headphones to walk from 2 blocks down over to here on the way to this. And I was like, what are you doing? And then the last one, start a club. Start a club, a book club, a crochet club, start a skateboard club, start any kind of club. You got a club? You can meet at the Generalist. We'll give free place to meet, any club. Start a club. Clubs are excuses to get together. We don't have to be Masons. You should really be obsessed with being a regular. If you can't name 2 or 3 places right now that you walk in and those people know you, shame on you. Why not? We do everything in an app. Everything's delivered. Everything's like, leave it on my front porch. You need to get to know some people. All you got to do is keep showing up. Our most loyal customer at the Generalist, he usually says 4 words when he walks in. It's just like, hey, Fred. Hey, how you doing? Okay. That's it. But when he threw out his back, we knew before anybody else because he's our neighbor, because we were looking out for him, because he was coming in, and you don't even have to buy something every time. Just keep showing up. If you're at a restaurant, this is the trick that my wife and I use to become the regular at any place that you're going. You ask these 2 questions to the waiter. Hey, what does everyone always order? And they'll tell you. And then you say, hey, what does the chef wish more people would order? And let me tell you, that chef comes out. And he's like, who asked that question? Here's a dessert. It's very important that you become a regular. You can't ask those questions at Olive Garden. This is a good filter about if you're at a local place or not. Think about businesses that are iconic in East Tennessee. Shamrock, Craig's Crown Cuts. Craig's Academy just churns out 3rd places. Barbershops are some of the most important parts of society. Earl's Barbershop. I met every kind of person that lives in East Tennessee as a child going to Earl's Barbershop every 2 weeks. Campbell's. You can't get the connection that you have at Campbell's at Guitar Center. And we know these things, but our actions, our behaviors have to reflect that. Ridgewood Barbecue. And I'll throw one corporate in there. Trek Store in Johnson City does such an incredible job of really aligning with community, really like taking their taco ride. It has like national acclaim. And that is a deeply rooted, grassroots, what does the community need, let's do it situation. You don't got to buy a Trek to go do that. You just got to show up on a Tuesday. This is what I'm going to leave you with, this quote. This is from a book called My Own Country about Johnson City and about its impact in the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s. I suppose this is when you know that a town has become your town. When others see bricks, a broken window, a boarded up storefront, you feel either moved to tears or to joy. The map of the town becomes the map of your memories, the grid on which you play out your obsessions, to which you mark your great loves and anonymities. Its geography becomes your destiny. That night, and for every night I lived in Johnson City, the town became the geography with which my dreams were set. None of us own Johnson City. None of us are more Johnson City than the others. Johnson City is a shared place. And the most important thing for us as members of this community, as it grows, as it evolves, as it changes, as it gets more notoriety, is we have to get to know the other people in that collective. That's all I got. Thanks, y'all.